The message arrived while I was standing beside my wedding cake with my new husband. Smiling next to me, soft music drifted through the ballroom. Guests laughed around candlelit tables, and for the first time in years I felt completely at peace. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and saw my father's name. Call me immediately. A second message appeared before I could even process the first. Your sister's losing her mind. Then another. The venue says the payment is gone. What did you do? I stared at the glowing screen while conversations continued around me. Nobody else knew that 5 miles away an entirely different celebration was collapsing in real time. My father kept calling. My sister kept texting. Panic poured through every notification. For a long moment, I simply looked at the messages. Then I typed 6 words. You made your choice, live with it. That was the moment my family finally discovered a truth they should have learned years earlier. My name is Hannah Brooks, and the night my family skipped my wedding was the same night they lost everything they thought they owned. Growing up in Georgia, there were 2 daughters in our house. My older sister Madison was beautiful, charming, and impossible to ignore. She could walk into any room and immediately become the center of attention. People adored her without effort. I was different. I was quieter, more serious, and more focused on building a future than collecting admiration. While Madison spent weekends at parties, I spent mine studying and preparing for military service. Our father made the difference between us obvious from an early age. Madison was his pride. I was his backup plan. Whenever something went wrong, I was expected to fix it. Whenever something went right, Madison received the applause. By my early 30s, I had become a senior Air Force officer managing complex operations. Worth millions of dollars, I had earned promotions through discipline, sacrifice, and years of hard work. Back home, none of it seemed to matter. If Madison bought a new dress, everyone talked about it. If I received a major military award, most relatives barely acknowledged it. For years I convinced myself that eventually things would change. I thought if I worked hard enough, succeeded enough, and helped enough, my family would finally see me. Instead, they simply learned to depend on me. When my mother needed expensive medical treatment, I quietly paid the bills. When my father nearly lost his construction company after a series of terrible business decisions, I stepped in behind the scenes. When Madison struggled with debt after her divorce, I helped keep her finances afloat. Nobody thanked me. Nobody even asked where the money came from. They simply accepted that problems disappeared whenever I was around. Then I met Ethan. He was a military doctor with a calm smile and a rare ability to make people feel understood. He never seemed intimidated by my career or my independence. Instead of competing with me, he supported me. One evening after a difficult day, I apologized for bringing work stress into dinner. He looked at me and said something nobody had ever said before. You do not have to earn your place with me. I almost cried. 2 years later, he proposed during a quiet vacation on the Carolina coast. There were no cameras or social media announcements, just waves, sunset, and the man I loved asking me to spend forever with him. For the first time, I felt certain about the future. We planned a beautiful wedding in Savannah and mailed invitations months in advance. Everyone received plenty of notice. Then everything changed. A few months before the wedding, my father hosted a family gathering. Halfway through dinner, Madison stood and announced her engagement. Everyone exploded with excitement. My father practically glowed with pride. Then Madison revealed the date of her engagement party. My wedding day. At first I thought she was joking. She was not. She had intentionally booked her celebration for the exact same weekend. The table fell silent. I waited for someone to object. Nobody did. Instead, excuses immediately began appearing. The venue only had that date available. People can attend both. It is not a big deal. But it was a big deal. And everyone knew it. When I pointed out the obvious conflict, I somehow became the problem. My father accused me of creating drama. Madison acted offended. Several relatives suggested that I postpone my wedding. Not her party. My wedding. That conversation changed something inside me. For the first time, I stopped hoping my family would choose me. I already knew the outcome. And sadly, I was right. Over the following weeks, the family group chat became completely consumed by Madison's engagement plans. Pictures of flowers, decorations, menus, dresses, and venue updates appeared daily. Nobody asked about my wedding. Nobody cared. Meanwhile, another realization was slowly taking shape. For years I had been carrying my family financially, not because they deserved it, because I loved them. But love without respect eventually becomes exhaustion. I began reviewing every account, every payment, every loan guarantee, and every financial obligation connected to my family. The numbers shocked even me. My father's business had survived largely because of my support. Several debts had been quietly covered through accounts connected to me. Madison's lifestyle depended heavily on money she never acknowledged receiving. The more I reviewed the records, the more clearly I understood something. I was not being treated like family. I was being treated like an insurance policy. So I made a decision. I would stop. Not immediately, not dramatically, strategically. I documented everything, every transfer, every payment, every loan, every guarantee, every financial rescue. Then I scheduled one final email. The night before my wedding, my mother called in tears. She confessed that most relatives had chosen Madison's engagement party. Even she would remain there because my father insisted it would look bad if family members left to attend my ceremony. I listened quietly. The pain was sharp but not surprising. The next morning I walked into my wedding chapel and saw rows of empty seats where my family should have been. No father, no sister, almost no relatives, just silence. For a moment I thought my heart might break. Then I saw Ethan waiting at the altar. The moment our eyes met, everything else faded away. He looked at me as though I was the only person in the world. Not because of what I could provide, not because of what I had accomplished, simply because I was me. I walked down that aisle alone, but somehow I did not feel alone anymore. The ceremony was beautiful. The vows were sincere, and when Ethan promised I would never have to earn love from him, tears finally escaped. Afterward, our reception began in a beautiful riverside ballroom filled with friends, colleagues, and people who genuinely cared about us. For the first time in years, I felt appreciated. Then the messages started arriving. The reason was simple. Earlier that evening, my scheduled email had been delivered. Every document, every record, every secret, sent simultaneously to my father, my sister, her fiancé, their attorney, and several financial offices connected to their accounts, along with one critical change. Every payment tied to my support had been terminated. Every guarantee had been withdrawn. Every emergency safety net had disappeared. The illusion collapsed instantly. When my father finally reached me by phone, his voice was shaking. "What have you done?" I remained calm. "Nothing, Dad. I simply stopped paying." Silence, then confusion, then realization. For the first time in his life, my father understood exactly how much I had been carrying. He learned that his business survived because of me. And when Ethan promised I would never have to earn love from him, tears finally escaped. Afterward, our reception began in a beautiful riverside ballroom filled with friends, colleagues, and people who genuinely cared about us. For the first time in years, I felt appreciated. Then the messages started arriving. The reason was simple. Earlier that evening, my scheduled email had been delivered. Every document, every record, every secret, sent simultaneously to my father, my sister, her fiancé, their attorney, and several financial offices connected to their accounts, along with one critical change. Every payment tied to my support had been terminated. Every guarantee had been withdrawn. Every emergency safety net had disappeared. The illusion collapsed instantly. When my father finally reached me by phone, his voice was shaking. "What have you done?" I remained calm. "Nothing, Dad. I simply stopped paying." Silence, then confusion, then realization. For the first time in his life, my father understood exactly how much I had been carrying. He learned that his business survived because of me. 3 months later, there was a knock at my front door. It was my father. He looked older, smaller, tired. The confidence he once carried had vanished. We sat together in my living room while rain tapped softly against the windows. For several minutes neither of us spoke. Then he finally said the words I never expected to hear. I did not understand. I waited. He looked down at his hands. "You never acted like you needed anything." That sentence explained everything. My entire life had been defined by that assumption. Because I was capable, people believed I required less love. Because I was strong, people assumed I felt less pain. Because I survived, they thought I needed less support. I looked at him quietly. Strong people still get hurt. His eyes filled with tears. For the first time in my life, I watched my father truly see me, not as the dependable daughter, not as the successful daughter, not as the one who solved problems, just as his daughter. Eventually he asked why I never told them everything I was doing. The answer came easily, because I wanted to know if you would love me without it. That broke him. He cried openly, years of denial finally collapsing under the weight of truth. Before he left, he stopped at the door and looked back at me. "I am proud of you." The words arrived decades late, but they were real. After he drove away, a final message appeared on my phone. "I love you." For a long time I stared at the screen. Then I smiled. Some wounds never completely disappear. Some apologies arrive too late. But carrying resentment forever is its own kind of prison. That night I sat beside my husband, listened to the rain outside, and finally released the burden I had carried for most of my life. Because being the strong one does not mean being unbreakable, and being dependable does not mean being disposable.